asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chap, believing in my own will. Web fire, math evil, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, setting ready for that ghost kill.
Hello, Canada. Matt McKeever here, and welcome to another episode of the Maple Pill. We're on episode number 62, and do you ever just have some of those days where you're just not feeling it? I started doing my research for tonight's segment, pulled up my usual tabs, started going through them, and I was just like, I don't know. And honestly, a big part of that for me these days is, are you guys watching what's going on in Shanghai in China right now? Because it is wild. Some of the social media footage that's coming out there, to the best of my knowledge, it's legitimate. Again, at this point in time, it's like, unless you've got personal firsthand accounts of things, it's so hard to know what's true, what's fake, what's manipulated, what's misrepresented or kind of misleading to whatever extent. And so I've got no idea if it's all legitimate, but some of the footage I've seen of what appears to be Chinese officials going in and like killing people's pets in their homes, dragging out the bodies of their pets, separating, children from parents, is some wild ass shit. And yeah, I don't know. It just kind of put me in a funk. I was like, you know what? Instead, let's do a special episode of the Maple Pill tonight where I'm actually just going to kind of pull up my usual 43 tabs and kind of walk through some of the stories with you guys. But I'd love to hear, where do you turn for your news? What are the sources that you find yourself regularly returning to? Because I'm always looking to broaden my horizon when it comes to my research stable. And, a founding principle here of the Maple Pill is really that idea, the concept that this should just be a springboard, right? A jumping off point for everyone to go do their own research, because it is important we all stay informed, even if, we sometimes don't really like the news we're presented with or the information that we stumble upon. So anyways, just kind of want to start off tonight's show with that precursor. So it's going to be a little bit different. But again, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section. What are the resources, whether it's like people you follow on Twitter, whether it's websites you regularly turn to, forums, Telegram chats, wherever you turn for your news, let me know. And I'll share with you guys some of my go-to sources as well. So I'm literally going to bring up my screen share here before I even open my tab. And let's open up I've got all these bookmarked on Google. So that's the browser I usually use. So I'm going to open up a new browser. I'm going to open up a new browser here. Let's pull it into screen and jump into my bookmarks. So essentially every day at what would it be, like around 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is 3 o'clock my time, I open up these 43 browsers. Now, these aren't the only websites I turn to, but they are kind of my consistent go-tos. Oftentimes, what I also find myself doing is just bookmarking random stories and random threads on Twitter. So between Twitter and these 43 tabs, which are slowly loading right now, that's really where I turn to. So usually start off here with Reuters. I just kind of go in order. There's no real particular order, mainly mainstream media in the first dozen or so tabs. But again, there's one or two that aren't. And one thing that did seem kind of interesting to me when I pulled up Reuters this morning or this afternoon when I started doing my research was I noticed that like there wasn't even a new news story today. Today's the 12th, right? And I was like, oh man, like Reuters isn't even feeling it. They can't even really get into it and release any news stories today about Canada. And then this National News Watch seems to be a decent little summary of a lot of the mainstream news outlets. So again, kind of like perusing that, we've got the regular articles. I guess I'm in the way right there, but there's definitely a sixth wave. So they're still going to try and push some fear mongering down our throats in regards to COVID. I mean, I'd be shocked if anyone watching this at this point in time can really get excited or excitable around a threat of COVID, but who knows? The Jean Charest stuff is interesting to me because, again, I don't understand why anyone in the Conservative Party would want to elect him, right? It just seems like you're literally pushing your party into more irrelevance, particularly when it feels like the Liberals and NDP really, pitched you a softball, right? Like they're begging to have a definitively distinct second party. And instead, what you're going to do is just copy pasta a liberal essentially into the CPC leadership. Seems bizarre to me, but I did see some headlines saying that he got his $300,000 raised, so he is officially in the race and he'll be on the ballot. Again, usually there's some pretty decent articles and stuff there, so I definitely appreciate National News Watch as an aggregator. Now, this one this is not going to be mainstream news. The Canada Free Press, which again, I guess it is technically CanadaFreePress.com. Wonder how they got that. But essentially, it's usually some hot takes and some counter-narrative perspectives. So, this one, will Americans and Canadians be shanghaied by their authoritarian China-centric government? I can't imagine in the very near future without a much more dangerous pandemic at our doorstep that, Biden or Trudeau would be able to get away with what's going on in Shanghai right now. And again, oh man, that shit just seems so fucked. I don't know how else to describe it. And definitely not interested in seeing that come to a Canada near me. Then AP News, although I don't know if I'm on like the wrong AP News. I'm pretty sure this is legit. It's apnews.com/hub/Canada. And again, it's almost always just sports stories. But every now and then they'll have a story that's not sports stories related to Canada. And that tells me that, that's a big mainstream story because, again, it's almost always just news. Seeing how we're just kind of chilling, I'll also chat with the chat a bit. Hey, what's up? We've got Step. We've got P58. We've got Finally Made Alive. What's up? Hey, Dirty Burger. Graham Griffin in the chat. What's your Twitter? It's just Matt McKeever 85, London Williams. And Sheree's a lib, says Dirty Burger. I wholeheartedly agree with you. But again, even the fact that the mainstream media and some CPC members are willing to entertain the fact that he could be a real threat to Pierre Poilievre or other. And again, it seems like it's really at this point in time, Pierre and Charest, if you're looking at how mainstream media covers it. I've got no idea if that's actually is there any interim polling that actually leads us to any perspectives? But next from CTV News, beyond negligent, health experts critical of leadership on sixth COVID wave. This is the, bread and butter of mainstream media these days. I'm just so tired of all these experts, right? It's the same thing with financial experts or Bank of Canada experts, economists experts. Obviously we want people that have a high degree of competency in any field to be the ones we turn to. But whether it's mainstream media choosing to massage and stretch the narratives they receive from experts, whether it's them only going to experts that are going to double down on the most hyperbolic statements, I don't know. But the experts that mainstream media turn to, I don't trust them. I do not trust them whatsoever. Obviously, narratives also around what's going on with the Bank of Canada announcement tomorrow. That will definitely be interesting to see what plays out 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow morning. Again, let me know your thoughts, your opinions, your hot takes, your predictions on what you expect the Bank of Canada to do in the chat as well. Then Canada News Media, again, just kind of a decent aggregator here. I don't know if there was any articles that really stood out to me when I was doing my initial skim of things. But, housing's obviously a big one that we keep seeing. I think this narrative here for real estate investors, you guys that are still actively real estate investors need to be careful of this. And this is why it's so important that real estate investors start getting involved in policy and local politics now. Multiple property owners own upwards of 41% of housing in some provinces, StatCan. And again, just understand that the way these narratives are often going to be presented in mainstream media, at least in my opinion, is to try and demonize landlords or anyone that owns more than one property, rather than actually looking at the monetary policy that's made that such an obvious strategy for the wealthy, right? Again, unproductive real estate should really not have any value and shouldn't be a speculative asset whatsoever. And productive real estate has its purpose, right, as an investment vehicle, but it certainly shouldn't be getting as much attention as we find in today's Canada. And again, it's only loose monetary policies that have got us here. And I guess one of the other narratives, I don't know if we'll come across it today, but one of the other narratives you'll see in mainstream media a lot right now is about Bank of Canada, I don't know if this is the right term, but like tapering or reducing quantitative easing. So based upon what I remember correctly there, essentially, was it $300 billion in like debt or bonds that the Bank of Canada purchased? And I believe they've announced, or it's expected they'll announce at this meeting, that they'll no longer be buying any more bonds. And part and parcel with that they won't be renewing or re-upping any of their existing bonds when they come to maturity. So again, that's kind of a double whammy there when we're thinking about the economic impact. And if we see a 50 basis point rate hike, and we also see quantitative tightening, or like at least they reduce the amount of quantitative easing out there. I'm not sure if quantitative tightening is a technical term or whether it just literally means we're not quantitatively easing anymore. Both of those things could drastically impact the real estate market. One thing that I definitely see a lot of pundits on Twitter talking about these days when it comes to real estate as well is understanding the fact that a lot of the people that we'll see buying today and tomorrow and for the next 30 or 60 days, a lot of them have been pre-approved already, at least if we're talking about like retail buyers and retail investors. So they've already, been pre-approved, got a locked in quote on a rate. And so they're able to still like execute their mortgages at like the older interest rates, where if we see a 50 basis point hike right now, and we've already seen the banks already front loading interest rate hikes, that is when we'd really expect things to start impacting the market. So it could be another 30, 60 days before you really see the full effects of it. So just something to be aware of. Definitely there's a bunch of headlines these days about Jason Kenney in Alberta. I only have a passing understanding or knowledge of that stuff. So again, not spending a ton of time on it. What's up, Basomatics in the chat? The fear mongering is insane. Went to the Weather Channel last night to check the weather, and they were pushing the story hard that this will be the storm of the century from this Wednesday to Friday. Yeah, so if you guys haven't been paying attention, it sounds like Manitoba is supposed to be hit. Again, what level of concern, I think, is all relative there. And I know they're talking about like where I am, we're not too far from the Manitoba border. So certainly we may have some spillover there, but I don't know if it's the end times per se. But yeah, the fear porn must continue because otherwise the ratings would dry up for mainstream media. Then obviously we hit up the CBC News. What do we got on the front page here today? Suspended BC doctor continues to spread COVID-19 misinformation. So I'm not familiar with Stephen Malthouse, and I haven't actually dug into his beliefs. So there definitely are some crackpot doctors, but there's also a lot of reasonable doctors out there that just aren't willing to push the full narrative. Why a Ukrainian mother wrote on her toddler's body as they fled the war. Yeah, I've definitely seen a few stories like this coming out as well. And right now with Ukraine and Russia, honestly, I can't tell whether we're coming or going with it. Both sides, I think, are massaging or right out manipulating the narrative to such an extent that I honestly think it's dangerous to have a hot take on anything until both sides like essentially admit something. It's hard for me to want to even have a hot take on things anymore. I was definitely wrong initially, before the conflict, the war broke out with Russia invading Ukraine. I honestly thought it was the American State Department crying wolf. Again, whether that's just me having my biases or whether that's just, me looking at history and the number of times we had, American intelligence agencies crying wolf, and they're ending up not being weapons of mass destruction or, collusions with Afghanistan terrorists and Iraq. Hard to say. I'm definitely biased. Gilbert Gottfried, dead at 67. That's definitely sad. He was a funny guy. I remember the first time, like, I only recently really got exposed to his comedy and Bill Saget's comedy. And I think it's on, like, there's a Netflix documentary. I don't know if documentary is the right word, but anyways, there's a Netflix series called Bumping Mics. I can't think of the two main headline comedians there, but they're hilarious. And they've got Gottfried and Saget come up in their the one night where they do a 3-night show. Definitely worth watching if you guys want some comedy in your life. And then mainstream CBC otherwise talking about Canadian runners. Schizophrenia is misrepresented TV. What to know about the NBA's play-in tournament. Again, the one thing that I'll say is interesting already, right? We've gone through a handful of Canada's mainstream media news outlets, no discussions of what's going on in Shanghai whatsoever. Again, that stuff frustrates me. MSN News. So again, this is usually just aggregating from the Canadian press, but a handful of different stories. Again, talking about Alberta. What's this one? BC Coroner wants urgent action on the safest drug supply 6 years into a safer drug supply. Yeah, I don't know. Again, just interesting that we're not going to come across any sort of discussions of what's going on in China right now. And you would think that, mainstream media would have an opinion because they want to push the COVID narrative so hard. So if they wanted to bandwagon jump and say how dangerous it was, you think they would point out China. And if they actually want to condemn what appears to be the abuses in China against its own citizens, again, you think they would come out and speak about it. But there's too much Ukraine on the brain for them, so they're not going to pay any attention because it doesn't fit in their current narrative. Again, the avian flu stuff, I think all of us should just be keeping an eye on. And again, it's seeming to be a more and more logical and rational decision to decide to stockpile some food. Even talking about this snowstorm or potential snowstorm in Manitoba, understand the fact that our supply chain is already weakened and continues just to seem to have these random stressful events, whether it's trucker protests, whether it's freaks of nature. I think that, there eventually comes a point where I think there's one straw too many that breaks the camel's back. I don't think we're there quite yet, but I don't think you ever really know until you know by firsthand experience. Sean Sound, regarding the double shooting in Toronto last week by Richard, Jonathan, Edwin, did you notice that the new CTV has repeatedly pushed the message that the shooter was a registered firearm owner? Oh, interesting. No, I haven't actually noticed that, Sean Sound. Appreciate you pointing that out. It's obviously very sad and the shooter's motive is unknown, but repeating this detail about him seems odd. Yeah, I definitely understand why your spidey senses would be tingling on that. I appreciate you sharing that in the chat. Again, for anyone watching this right now, we're doing a slightly different episode of Maple Pill just because kind of felt like blah about today's news cycle and just wanted to mix things up a little bit. So one, if you guys have any recommendations for news outlets I should be turning to, let me know in the chat. Whether it's, websites, blogs, Twitter accounts, Telegram chats, all that stuff, let me know. National Post here. We've got more stuff talking about gas prices. We've got Pierre Poilievre on the front page. What else do we got at the top here? Canadian pilots jailed in Dominican Republic. Oh, had we, I didn't dig deep into it, but had I done the normal episode, this probably would have been a clown pill, I suspect, because I don't understand why they'd get jailed. But I haven't read the article yet. Freedom Convoy, Tamara Lich hires Lawrence Greenspan as defense lawyer. Gunman shoots 10 inside New York subway. That seems crazy. And it sounds like they didn't have any CCTV footage or camera set up in the subway, which is wild as well to think, because I naturally assume you're almost always on camera whenever you're in an urban setting these days. Thousands still on unpaid leave as Liberals late updating federal public service vaccine mandate. Unions, Sheree Brown say they would honor federal childcare agreements with provinces as Conservative leader. UK PM Johnson's wife threw him surprise birthday, ends up in Partygate fine. Oh yeah, this was where British politicians broke their own rules. Again, politicians, they don't actually think that these rules are important, right? They only believe they're important for protecting them and their narrative so that they can stay in power. They can grow their little fiefdom. And that's really all they seem to care about. We got pay gated here, and I don't feel like going through the hassle of copy pasting the link. So we'll just keep moving. Global news, motion calling for green space opportunities in Williamsville corridor heads to committee. That seems like a random one. I don't know enough about it, but I guess something to do with Kingston. Team Alberta Crops adds 4 new partners to advocacy efforts, and hospital grapple with historical staff absences, burnout amid 6th COVID wave. And I guess like one thing when we're thinking about like COVID and the burnout of hospital staff and things of that nature, again, I don't know. I've heard, so many different firsthand and secondhand takes. I've heard people saying that like, yeah, they're overstretched, stretched thin, stressed out. I've also had other people say like, hey, there's nothing going on in the hospital I work in. But I think one thing to be aware of is for a lot of these hospital staff members, they've probably just been bombarded nonstop with propaganda and fear porn. They usually see the worst. Oh, didn't mean to hit the mic there. They usually see the worst of things, right? So again, I understand why they would probably have a lot of those issues. And like we still haven't caught up on all the delayed surgery screenings and things of that nature over the last 2 years. There is eventually going to be a day of reckoning. And it might not be a binary moment, right? It could just be us slowly seeing a higher death rate for the foreseeable future. And I think I just saw something the other day where Stats Canada came out and said the average age of someone that died, I forget whether it was with or from COVID. I don't know if they made a distinction, but they essentially said it was 83. And the average life expectancy is, I believe, 76. So that's that's the state of affairs. Don't know if there's too much else here, but again, doesn't seem to be much China talk right now. Jumping over to the Toronto Star. We've got Doug Ford draws fine for comments during Top Doctor's Caribbean vacation, or draws fires. Yeah, and like I get it. There definitely is a hypocrisy there when they won't let unvaccinated people travel. And I don't know. I guess we kind of find ourselves, in my opinion, like in the probably wrong analogy, but like a catch-22 where you don't want to like condemn these politicians and things like that for going and traveling, because like we actually want to return to normal, right? We want to normalize the idea of travel, but at the same time, we want to condemn them for not just like granting that right or privilege to everyone. And that certainly is frustrating to say the least, in my opinion. Complete stranger with cache of guns arrested in Toronto, killing of international student, 35-year-old man. Just 15% of homeowners hold nearly 1/3 of Ontario's housing wealth, says reports. I beg you, mother pleads for information in shocking Wasaga Beach abduction. 13-year-old boy granted bail in shooting death of Toronto boy 15. So that's kind of what we got making the rounds here on the Toronto Star. If we jump over to Canada, let's jump over to Canada. Come on, Toronto Star. All right. Well, we're a little slow here, but again, just the usual sort of COVID stuff. Jump over to world. Don't think we're going to see much mention of China either. What do we got going on in the chat while I'm waiting for the shit to load? Justin's propaganda networks don't want Justin to be correlated with China after all the here he's taken for being a dictator. Yeah. Graham Griffin just found out from a supplier that certain construction materials are unavailable due to the manufacturer unable to source a chemical. Some supplies still exist in other suppliers' yards. Interesting. Appreciate you sharing that, Graham. So again, we're primarily, when it comes to like world politics, right, from Canadian news outlets, it's going to be Russia, Ukraine, California. What else we got? COVID, Department of Justice, Russia. Yeah. Again, seems pretty quiet. What if we scroll down to Asia? Got some Pakistan, some Sri Lanka, Philippines, Pakistan, Thai, Indonesian, Japan. So yeah, can't even get a China mention. That's funny. Globe and Mail. Again, Globe and Mail is usually pretty good for some hardcore Ukraine Russia stuff. Although I did find this funny. It's not funny, but it's just interesting the narratives they decide to focus on here. LGBTQ Ukrainians fearing Russian attacks at home and discrimination in shelters, face an uncertain future. And I guess like a couple things that kind of come to mind when you look at these narratives, and I haven't looked at the article, so I don't know how deep they go into it, and I'm probably going to get pay gated. But yeah. But one thing I've noticed is oftentimes like they don't really talk about what it was like before the war, right? Like, was Ukraine this bastion for trans and LGBTQ Ukrainian? Like, I think it was just a country where in urban centers it was mildly tolerated. Maybe in some of the biggest cities, accepted. And again, in a lot of places, they maybe weren't as hostile, or maybe it wasn't as much of a threat. But is it right now dangerous to be Ukrainian in Ukraine? Right. And I don't know why we need to immediately jump to identity politics and try and even like magnify it. Right. Like, I think it's enough. Like, if half the stories they're telling us are true about the Russians at this point in time, I don't think you need to focus on this identity politics narrative. I think you can actually just focus on reporting what's happening. Right. I don't know. Maybe I'm just an old crotchety man. Toronto Sun, California man fatally run over by car during catalytic converter theft. Toronto Sun's usually good for like more random shit, at least in my opinion. Again, usually do like to see what's trending and seeing what's kind of going on. Mask mania hits Ontario harder than the latest COVID wave. It's interesting. Like, there's certain like pundits that honestly, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I don't mind your take on that. And then like the next day I'll be like, wait, I don't know. It sometimes feels like there's a disconnect between, or maybe they just like kind of pull out whether they're going to like the topic name and then like whether they're going to be pro or against something. But again, Brian Lilly, sometimes I enjoy his takes and sometimes not so much. Gunman sets off smoke bomb, shoot 10 in a New York subway car. Don't expect to see Sandin, Case, and Maple Leafs. Yeah, the sports stuff, it's definitely a recurring theme in a lot of the mainstream press, and it's just something that I've got no interest in. And it's kind of interesting. Like, one thing I was thinking about the other day is like, do we need our news outlets to be so all-encompassing that they're going to cover like celebrity gossip, they're going to cover like TV shows, they're going to cover like music, entertainment, arts, they're going to cover sports, and then we're also going to have them cover like serious world affairs? Like, it kind of, I don't know. I don't know if we need that all-in-one source for our news. I think that's okay to split it up a bit. And I jump over to the Canada Poly forums. Again, I don't really pull from here too often, but every now and then there's something interesting that might pique my interest or send me down a rabbit hole. Always like to check out what my buddy Mark at Canada Poly has going on his daily show. So again, if you wish that my show was longer or there was a show like mine but didn't involve me, you may want to check out Canada Poly. He's on all the regular channels, although I think he's banned on YouTube. Then Rebel News, obviously, I turn to, usually mainly just focused on their Canada coverage. One thing that's, I get why they're doing it, but one thing that's unfortunate, I feel like they used to have a higher ratio of written articles to video, where now the vast majority of their content feels to be video oriented. And that's probably like a smart thing. But for me, it's sometimes nice to skim, right? And so like you can skim a written article a lot faster than a video, I find. Or maybe I'm just bad at skimming videos. Let me know. Blacklock's Reporter, always high on my list. I actually kind of have it midway through because sometimes like I might get through all those mainstream media news outlet sources and be like, it's going to be a garbage show. And then Blacklock's usually brings the heat. So we've got like Sweetheart tax deals alleged. Obviously, that's going to pique my interest. Junkets and Facebook friends, internal human resources. Let's zoom in here. Internal human resources report detailed dysfunction in senior management at the Canada Revenue Agency, including one executive who hired Facebook friends and was suspected of billing taxpayers for junkets abroad. A certain level of dysfunction exists within the existing working relationships. Read a briefing note for the Director General. Further action will likely be required in order to remedy the apparent toxic nature of the workplace. Kabul allies plead with MPs. Yeah, I've definitely seen a few things coming out of here of like, our former Afghanistan allies saying like, hey, it'd be really cool if you guys treated us as, the way you're treating Ukraine refugees. And we're like, Afghanistan, that was like a news cycle ago. You can't expect us to like, stay committed to our previous commitments when there's new commitments we could be making. We could be fucking up someone else's corner of the world rather than focusing on, trying to at least clean up the mess we left you with. Detect gangland at City Hall. Organized crime has infiltrated the public sector, but mainly at the municipal level, says a federal report. Predictions, I bet it's really high in Quebec. That's just my biased hot take on it. I haven't actually read the article. Although, depending on if we're like, I think, yeah, also Vancouver is wrought with it. I'm sure, Ontario is too. Just not sure if it's going to be in some of the smaller provinces. Execs enjoy a work time drink. Cancel them one at a time. Foreigners convicted of crimes in Canada would automatically have all immigration permits and papers canceled under a cabinet proposal. Currently, the Canada Border Service Agency complained employees must spend an average half hour manually voiding permits one at a time for every person named in a deportation order. In 2018, over 30,000 removal orders were issued. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if there's something about like that's like an extra check and balance. But again, Blacklock's reporter, they are worth the paid subscription. Zero Hedge, I always go to just for some hot takes on world affairs and economics. Yeah. This story about CNN Plus, not sure if you guys have been following it, but like CNN launched like their online, CNN portal or whatever of news, CNN Plus. And I'm pretty sure they spent like $300 million on it, and they've got like 10,000 subscribers on it. So, if I was doing the Maple Pill today, I would make that a white pill story because that would actually warm my heart to know that, people aren't buying into all the bullshit. U.S. pulls consulate staff from Shanghai as Beijing eases lockdown. Again, some of the footage out there doesn't seem like it's being eased too much, but who knows? Maybe that footage is a couple days old. Mises Institute, always good for some economic news as well as just, taking aim at the status. So that's what I turn to there. Ron Paul, huge Ron Paul fan, and the Ron Paul Institute. Again, them and the Mises Institute, they really go hand in hand, in my opinion. Post-millennial is great for, some anti-woke stories and things of that nature. And again, usually very heavy on the Canadian politics side, which I really do appreciate. True North, again, to me, it also like kind of goes hand in hand with post-millennial. Between the two of them, you're usually going to get the closest thing to a counter narrative for what's RCMP billed taxpayers nearly $250,000 for buffets during Freedom Convoy crackdown. That's interesting. Again, like who knows? Maybe that actually all makes sense and scales, but sometimes those numbers just jump out at you. Like how many people are we talking? I need to know how many heads in order to know whether I'm outraged or not. Events on the invoice, dinner buffet cost $12,000. Again, I don't know. I've fed people at like some of our conventions and stuff in the past, and that shit is fucking expensive, and I'm cheap. And again, even when you get them like the bare minimum. Oh, that's interesting though. Buffet cost spiked from an average of $4,000 to $10,000. Again, I'm just skimming here, but anyways, love True North. Timcast, always like Timcast, though it's usually primarily just American stories. Although when the Freedom Trucker Convoy was going hard, they had some great coverage of it as well. And actually, they had a podcast last night with John Rich, the country musician, and he's I've just never seen him speak before. I knew him as a country artist, but he's actually really well spoken, really well informed, and it's a solid episode of the Timcast. If you're interested, then check out Louder with Crowder. Again, usually not a ton of stories here, but like usually it's good for a clown pill, to be honest. That's what I kind of turn to it for. McLean's, It's very slow on the news updates. So they've really just been beating the Ukraine stuff. It seems like, they're much more like still magazine article oriented. So like a new month will come and then it seems like they'll drop a bunch. Canadian news. This one usually just has different stories than what I'd usually come across. So in case something somehow slipped through the net, that's what I got them there for. The National Observer, because while I probably disagree with 99% of their politics, I still want to understand where they're coming from. And again, if ever I want to really get myself worked up in a lather about climate change, I know the National Observer's got my back. What else do we got going on in the chat? Did that one. Basmatic, are we still allowed to move crypto to a paper wallet from the exchanges in Canada? Absolutely, Basmatic. The only thing you need to be aware of is any transfers over $1,000, you essentially have to report what you're transferring it to. I'm not going to give you any legal advice and stuff like that, but you could transfer it to a cold storage wallet or a paper wallet, and then if we're talking like Bitcoin or something like that, and there's lots of different ways to do it, so you don't have to do it any of the ways I'm about to say right now. You could put it in that, and then you could put through like coin tumblers and stuff like that. I know some people don't like those. Some people don't think that they're foolproof. You could maybe switch it to like a privacy coin network, do some transfer it to a couple wallets there, then transfer it back to a new clean wallet. Again, I don't think we're at the stage where you have to panic and un-KYC all your coins right away. But again, like the idea of like food prep and food storage, it's probably not a bad idea. And you sure as hell shouldn't be keeping your shit on a exchange because they will absolutely freeze your ass. They've shown that to us already this year. Vice.com. Again, similar to kind of the National Observer, where I'm probably not going to agree with a lot of your politics, but I do want to understand where you're coming from and even, what stories do you think are important? And Vice News is good for that. Difference of opinion. Then check out The Province because, usually it's just going to have a lot of syndicated stories from the National Post. It also sometimes has its own hot takes, and particularly if we're talking about things out west in BC. Then canoe.com, again, kind of similar to like an MSN.com where it's just an aggregator of different stories. But sometimes what'll happen is for whatever reason, like a Canoe or an MSN.com will be promoting a story that wouldn't have been like front page or for whatever reason got buried from one of the main news articles or like news outlets. And they'll just be like their story, right? So that's kind of why I like to check them out. Then check out some Reddit posts. Honestly, Reddit's a garbage fire. Every now and then I just go into the comments just to remind myself that, while I want to always be white pilled, I guess if I ever need a fast black pill, I can turn to the Reddit comment section. What else do we got going in the chat? We've got Terry. You're an old crotchety man at heart, and we love it. Realist. Appreciate it, Terry. You need to do a good old-fashioned pig roast potluck. Yeah, we definitely plan on doing some cool events up here at the Citadel. So if you guys want to stay informed, join the Problems for Profits Discord. Link in the video description down below. So yeah, just kind of check out the two subreddits around Canada. I don't even know why the Beaverton's here. Every time I'm expecting them to like be funny or have something good, and they so rarely do. Like Sleeping Cat literally has no idea how close it is to nuclear annihilation. I mean, you didn't even like proofread your sentence there, your headline. Honestly, most of the time, this is just here to remind me that the left is terrible at humor and memeing. It kind of gives me hope. Then the Canadian Report. Again, these are going to be some stories that are off the beaten trail. Sometimes you might want to like corroborate these stories, but again, usually just some interesting perspectives. So got them in the mix. iPolitics, particularly for some of the policy stuff. Again, usually they're going to have kind of one political bent, but every now and then they surprise me with their coverage. Then we've got the Epic Times, again, pretty U.S. centric, but when the Freedom Convoy was going strong, they had some good coverage there. They're also they've got the CCP virus outbreak. So, respect that. Western Standard, again, when we had the Coots Alberta stuff, this was definitely the best coverage going on. And again, they're much more, I'm sure that, people would call them right-leaning. I would argue that like a decade or two ago, they almost would have been more centrist. But again, usually some different takes that you're not going to find in Canada's mainstream news outlets. Fee.org, again, often looking at like policy and big picture issues. And I definitely appreciate their different takes. And again, coming kind of from a variety of different perspectives. So I'm definitely not going to agree with everything, but it's good to be exposed to that. The Fraser Institute, because when they put stuff together, it's pretty legit. And usually it's calling out a lot of the inefficiencies in government. The Counter Signal, Kian, he's doing a great job, and he's definitely growing it. Even just like in the last year, this website has improved a lot. He's now got like staff writers. Definitely love the fact that he's growing his little media empire here. And I hope to see it continue to rise. And Spencer Fernando, I actually don't know much about him, but I've read lots of his articles here. But he seems to be going strong as well. Again, if you want to see some of the crazy Shanghai shit, he's got some coverage of it. And I haven't read this one yet, but when I saw it, I was like, man, this actually speaks to my personal opinion here. The laziness of calling everything populism. It just feels like now, like, both sides, like right now, the left is primarily in control. So they're mainly using populism as a derogative towards the right. But I'm sure if the right was in power and you had like Bernie Sanders or Jagmeet Singh, raising the battle cry, we'd see populism being demonized by the right as well. Then Matt Taibbi, love his stuff. And again, really worth deep diving. And I'm surprised by, despite the fact that he's got a paid Substack, usually most of his articles are free to read. Or at least like when they first come out, they are, it seems like. So respect that. And then Glenn Greenwald as well. He's crushing it. And love hearing his perspectives on stuff. A little bit more of his stuff ends up being behind paywall, but can't fault him for that. He's got to make a living. And that's kind of meant to go on screen share. And that's essentially the bulk of the sources I go to, other than, random stories I stumble across on Twitter and Instagram. And I essentially just bookmark those. So now you guys know how the sausage is made in regards to the maple pill. And, it just kind of feels good to mix it up for a little bit. And again, like I said, there just wasn't any news stories I really wanted to sink my teeth into today. And watching those videos of dogs and cats get killed in China, I don't know. That shit's some dark pill. Terry says, how many seconds from midnight on that doom clock? I haven't bothered checking in the last decade. Yeah, I'm sure it's getting pretty darn close. And again, those of us at the Citadel, I've ran all the scenarios on nukemap.com or whatever it is. We covered that, I think, last Friday's episode. We look good. We look pretty safe if it comes to nukes. So I think we've got our bases covered there. Those of you in urban centers, your doomsday clock is probably a little bit closer to midnight than ours. But that's it for tonight's Maple Pill. I hope you guys enjoyed just shaking it up a little bit. If you didn't, let me know. If you did, let me know. Those of you that are watching, real talk here. Is anyone actually watching this on BitChute, or is it just like robots that watch my shit on BitChute? Because I've got this false sense of hope and optimism, because like when I upload to Rumble, honestly, if the Freedom Trucker Convoy is not pumping, I'm lucky to get like a dozen views on Rumble. Whereas BitChute consistently always like 20, 30 views, but never a comment, and way less subscribers and likes than what I get on Rumble, which seems bizarre. So yeah, just curious on that. If anyone can explain to me, is it turning out that there's just like AI learning algorithms watching my shit? Let me know that, so I can check my ego and be like, hey, you're not earning those 30 views on BitChute. Otherwise, if you guys enjoyed this, smash the like button, hit subscribe, all that good stuff. Again, really appreciate the fact that we got to 1,000 subs on YouTube. It can be really easy in this modern modern social media era to get jaded, but the fact that 1,000 people cared enough to hit that button really does mean a lot to me. So I appreciate you guys. If you guys want more Matt McKeever in your life, you can check me out on Instagram, Matt McKeever Unfiltered on Instagram. Essentially just me posting a lot of memes and shit. And it seems like every now and then it triggers people, but trust me, these memes are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to my political views. So be glad that I just don't go full unfiltered there if you're easily offended. And I think that's usually all the buttons I hit here. Anyways, really appreciate you guys joining me for these 62 episodes. We'll be back tomorrow. I'll probably do a normal episode tomorrow again, and we'll roll from there. And if you're going to be looking into the Shanghai stuff, you might want a stiff drink, because that shit is... There's just so much video evidence of it, right? That's not to belittle all the other tragedies going on in the world. It's simply the fact that, like, it's so in your face, right? Because it's just, there's, I guess, so many people, 24 million people in Shanghai, right? So it's like all of Canada. And they've all got smartphones and they're all recording what's going on. So anyways, thanks, Dirty Burger. Appreciate the support in the chat there. Thanks, Sean Sound. And we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And, let's get a song stuck in your head with the mailbag song. All right. And the song's not playing. Well, that was a lot of hype for nothing. Let me see if I can get this going here.
Leave some smoke trails. Mailbag Monday. Send Matt a pack and it's gonna be a fun day. Mailbag Monday. Send Matt a pack, live stream every Monday. Mailbag Monday. Send Matt a pack and it's gonna be a fun day. Mailbag Monday. Send Matt a pack, live stream every Monday. Welcome to the live stream. This is Dan the Lost Boy with Project LB52 and Space Monkey Fight Club.